workshops. Today is the last day of our workshops. Today is the third program that will be presented for us by way of WHO representatives. Pierpaolo Modu will be with us today, and also today he will familiarize us with another software that is called Greener. It allows to assess the impact of green areas within the city structures. How do they affect the human health? He will familiarize us with that software. He'll show us the way to use it right. I hope he will give us examples of operation that software. Good day, Pierre. It is my pleasure to welcome you again.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here. I am going to present another work that the Bonn office, the WHO Bonn office on environment and health is carrying out, and is a work that is related to land use and green space in particular. So I think during this week you have been exposed to factors and to behaviors that are affecting our life in a city, the place where we live. And the way we tackle, the way we work with these environmental factors is quite different. And you have seen with their pollution that at the moment we have a lot of discussions about how to model long-term and short-term. And this discussion had produced a methodology that is agreed by all the scientists about producing health impacts of air pollution. And then for walking and cycling, we are moving from estimates that are done at country level to estimates that are done at a city level. What I'm gonna do this morning, I will go a little bit more in detail about what's happening in a city, taking the case of green space. So I will start sharing my screen. Let me know if you can see the.
Yes, Pierre, we do see your presentation.
Okay. I'm trying to see if I can put it in. Can you see it better?
Yes.
Russian, sorry, you have it in Russian, right?
No, Pierre, unfortunately, our presentation that we see is in English.
Okay, but
oh, please forgive me. It has changed. Now we do have it in Russian. I apologize.
No problem. Okay. Thank you. Well, I have to thank the interpreters. Last time I was off, but I have to thank interpreters because it's when you do translation of technical aspects of technical work, is never easy and it's always a challenge. So I have to thank them. I'll do it now, and I go on. I have prepared a few slides. Some of them will introduce you to the issue of green space and health. And this is very important, understanding how we are taking all the information that are published by the scientific community and how we are interacting with the scientific community. The fact that there is a huge work on green space and health poses also a lot of challenges when you want to go from, measurements of risk to measurements of impacts. And this is something that we have already, I think, been discussing with air pollution. And we have a project where we are putting together the knowledge that we have on green spaces and health, and trying to see if we can help cities, if we can help people that work in land use, in planning, in public health, and have a tool that can be used also for not only for educational purposes and trainings and also for sharing information, also for advocacy and also for understanding that a dialogue between public health people and planners can be done when you have the tools to do it. And this is one of several tools that exist, I would say, and urban planners know this very well. So I will give you later a short presentation of the work that we are doing with that I'm coordinating with the support of many colleagues and also with people that are programming. And this project is Green UR. And you will see an application of Green UR quite quickly. I will move from the slides. I will move to the software, and I will show you what we are doing. Okay. The first point that is very, very important to emphasize is about the fact that as in air pollution, I will do a lot of analogy. I will do similar consideration that I have done for air pollution for green space. For the people that have worked in air pollution field, they have to remember that I mentioned this in my workshop, in my masterclass on Tuesday. At the beginning, for many, many years, we were putting our attention on short-term effects. And along the years, it was a long process. We moved from short-term effects to long-term effects, taking care of the fact that air pollution is affecting people in the long term. And the same it was for the measurements of the indicators of the pollutant. At the beginning, there was so-called total suspended particles. Then people started measuring PM10. Then the evidence has been on PM2.5. So you see, there was an history of accumulating knowledge, of discussing. The scientists all over the world have been trying to understand what are the health effects of air pollution. And it's the same from green space. The only difference at the moment, I would say, that there is a kind of a lag in terms of knowledge and information that we receive. Air pollution started already in the 50s, people gathering data on air pollution and health. While for green spaces and health, we have people starting already in the 70s. And I'm seeing that people starting gathering information in a more systematic way. So our work, WHO work, is to ensure that we gather all the information that are published everywhere. So not only in English, but also in different languages. And we do then systematic reviews. And we gather experts from all over. We have discussions, we get feedback, and we try to summarize this in reports. And if possible, if there are not already existing tools, we develop tools. And usually when you have tools, you can have case studies. So very similar to the air pollution kind of situation. There are a few differences regarding green space. Well, air pollution and green spaces have been with the history of humanity since always. So you can read, I mean, there are text and there are famous pages written about air pollution even in the Middle Age and even before at ancient Roman times. And it's the same for green space. Nature has been part of the evolution of us. And so what we are saying is that the importance of green space and health had something that we have always had in mind, but only recently people have started digging and I would say being very detailed about what green space can produce in terms of health benefits. And there are also some negative effects of green space. I will also mention them later. But you see now, this is a paper that was published by Zhang. I will give you the reference. I think that I put the reference for you in this presentation. So it's a recent paper published 2 years ago when they tried to find in the last 100 years all the papers that were published on green space and health. And you see the definition of green space is very broad and large. So it's not only green space, but it's public parks, it's nature, it's street trees, it's green corridors, it's urban forest. So you also are familiar with the fact that green space is just, a large label, as air pollution is. So air pollution is not just one single entity because we have different substances, different pollutants. The same is for green space. We have many, many different kinds of green spaces. And then when scientists started putting a green space in relation to health, they also started listing the first health outcomes that are associated to green space. So health and well-being, and you see mental, emotional health or mental stress, happiness, and then they start also adding mortality, cancer, chronic disease, obesity. So this is what has happened in the last 20, 30 years. So this paper collection of 30,000 documents give us an idea of the fact that we have now so many articles, so many information that we can also move toward using this information for something that we like in a way or another, that is quantifying, associating numbers, estimating risk, assessing impacts. And, we describe reality with words or with pictures, but many times it's better to describe reality with numbers, with mathematics. And that's why I'm showing you the fact that in the past, so when I started working for WHO 20 years ago, there were not many papers on green space and health, and there was no way, if you want to do a risk assessment. I don't want to call it risk, but we understand if I say risk assessment or impact assessment of green space on health. So at the time of year 2000, there were just 150 papers a year published on green space and health. So a single scholar, a single scientist could read all the papers, almost all the papers, at least the most important papers. The situation now is completely changed. Now there are, I think, more than 2,000, 3,000 papers a year. This year there will be 3,000 and more papers. So the whole literature has been growing at a level in which there is not a single scholar that is able to master the discipline. It's not a discipline, it's an interdisciplinary work. And this goes to the fact that we need to, to involve a lot of different people, we need to work with big teams. And particularly when we touch nature and the interaction between humans and nature. I have brought here a slide where I have the green space coverage for some European cities. This gives you also. Let's start seeing the big picture. There are places, because of meteorological conditions, because of urban planning, because of the history of the places, that they have a large amount of green space. And here I have shown something that was calculated in 1995, but obviously there are more calculations done recently, and these kind of calculations are done every year, every month. And this is urban greenness all over the world. And this is a report that was done recently, and you see how in cities that have more than 1 million inhabitants, there are the climatic conditions that are affecting the presence, the level of urban greenness. And you see also how there are part of the world where the level of urban greenness is quite low. So what has happened is that as in air pollution, I show in air pollution that basically we need 4 ingredients to cook, to put together the air pollution and the health impacts. And it is also complicated there for air pollution because you have to think which pollutant you are addressing, the sources of air pollution. So if it is transport, if it is the industry, if it is agriculture, and green space is even more complicated. So defining exposure to green space, it means that you have a clear definition of green space, and then you have to do something that for air pollution is relatively simple, but is not for green space. So in air pollution, we have epidemiological data that work for adults, for example, not this differentiating between gender, between male and females. While in green space, you have a much more articulated analysis where you need to know the age, the gender, ethnicity, the socioeconomic status. So there are many different aspects that are taken into account when understanding the exposure of people to green space. So all these social aspects, basically, they produce a different mechanism of interaction. And so there are people that are doing more physical activity because they like to do sport, they like to run. There are people that they stay at home much more and they do not walk much. There are places where the parks are very, very nice, and parents with children, they like to bring them. And what this implies is that green spaces are affecting us in a very different way, and all these different ways are producing different health outcomes. I am showing you this graph from Lakovic and Jones, 2013, because I think it gives you an idea of the complexity. But the complexity is a challenge that we have to tackle, that we have to address. So we have the physical health benefits and we have the psychological health benefits. This is also, I would say, does not take into account all the interrelation between nature, greenness, and people and human. I was mentioning the fact that once you have all this information, once you have all these statistics, once you have all the experts working on a different aspects of health in relation to green space, you can start summarizing this. And we have done this in one report that we published a few years ago about urban green spaces and health. And there is evidence about improved mental health that is related to exposure to green space. I'll go back to this later. And there is also now evidence from cohort studies. So if you remember the discussion in air pollution, cohort studies are the most important studies in this kind of environmental aspects and impacts, because you can follow the population for many years and you see how they basically develop their health status in relation to many different factors. So, and then statisticians and mathematicians model the health outcomes that they have, and they put in relation with all the different variables that have been measuring for the cohort. So we have now studies that are also cohort studies, which we could measure even the risk of mortality in relation to the exposure, so living in places with less or more green space. And there are many more studies, and just we put this in the report about improved pregnancy outcomes and reduced prevalence of diabetes. And these studies now are accumulating more and more. So we have more evidence, we have more, we know much more in detail what's happening. I can go back on this if you want anytime. So the most important thing is that with our colleagues, Matthias here in the office, Matthias Braubach, has been very good in putting in going from the review of evidence that we have on the health effects of green space to suggest interventions. And so the impacts of having a green space in one city, in one neighborhood, in one precise place, and the population are and the effectiveness of also doing intervention is something that is important to take into account when if you are a planner, and this was also translated in a brief for action. So it's a short document that you can download. And my colleague Matthias made also translation in different languages, and Russian is one of them. So you find it translated in very different European languages that are in all the Europe. I'm going now to move to the tool, to the software, so we can have even a more detailed discussion. If there are questions, again, interrupt me. If there's something that is unclear, I'm here available for you. And please don't be shy. No problem if there are no stupid, silly questions. Whatever you have in mind that you want to share is really welcome. Challenges. I have put a list of issues and problems that you will face if you're working on green space and health. And some of them are trivial. I mean, you know them. Some others are a little bit more complicated. I go by one, but then I will go and use the work that we do with planners to show these different issues. So the first thing is how to define green spaces. And this is trivial. There are countries, there are cities, places where people define green spaces in very different ways. I give you an example. There are some countries where cemeteries, for example, are considered green spaces. There are countries where a stadium is considered a green space. So, and other countries where these are not considered green space, and green spaces are only considered if there is a garden with flowers. So there are a lot of things that you have to consider. And this is a cultural aspect that has a lot of implications for planning. The second thing is that, okay, how do we measure green space? I'll go with this directly later in a few minutes with the software. How then we put a green space in relation to health? Again, I will go on this with GreenUR. And then there are questions that are also common to other risk factors, like what's the minimum level of green space that benefits me? And these are much more complicated kind of questions, okay? And then there is other questions that are related to something that we will see very soon. One question is about the how effective is to do an intervention in which you are promoting the benefits of urban green spaces. So sometimes you build a park in a neighborhood, and then the park becomes a place that is unsafe. People do not like it. It's full of mosquitoes. So there are a lot of issues. So when there is a planning, when there is the maintenance of a green space, you need to have in mind also all the consequences and what you are doing is really effective. But the last point is something that is very important, and I hope in the future we will have the possibility to have a collaboration and also more discussions. That is about the ecosystem services provided by green space. And so, in few words, how much green spaces are, for example, modifying the air pollution conditions of a place? How much a barrier of green space is able to reduce noise? And how much heat and cool effect from green space is can be implemented with some interventions? And this part is one part where I think a lot of discussions should be done, and it's an area of work where a lot of scientists all over the world are working. One thing that that I have not mentioned, but you have to keep in mind, particularly when planning, is the fact that you have a different representation of green space. So now I'm going a little bit more in detail about the technical aspects of putting green space in relation to health. So we have satellite data. Then we have the master plan of a city. Then we have OpenStreetMap. If you go on Google, you have there is a project where people from all over the world are putting how the land use of their place is done. Okay, so there are a lot of different information that are around, and all this information are something that we have to keep in mind when we do. A political discussion, or we do modeling, or we do advocacy. And I'll go back to this again very soon. I have put here a slide where this is the relation basically of the effects of green space on particulate matter. We have done a review. It's not really systematic, but I think it covers all the aspects of the effects of green space on air pollution. So here we go much more in detail about what's happening in reality. And you remember I mentioned quickly air pollution. I mean, is something that is affecting us at least different scale. So you can have places that are polluted because there is industries that are 300 kilometers away. So there is transboundary air pollution problems. There are international problems of air pollution, and then there are places that are highly polluted. So if you think about the interaction between green space and air pollution, then you have to consider the whole complexity of the scale in which you are operating. So if you are at a regional scale, there is the possibility of thinking about removal of and capture of air pollution of PM by green spaces, and all these kind of thinking should be part now. I hope it's already part in many cities, and people are already aware of this. But it's obvious that there is more to be done here, and about planners and public health people working on this issue. So I have put on this slide something in relation to the whole kind of potential green effects on the exposure to PM, and I'm gonna I'm going to summarize what I have told you and move to a more operational way of working using this WHO tool that is called GreenUR. I don't know if there are questions so far. Again, I am available for answering any doubt, any curiosity, anything that you have in mind. So no problem with any kind of question.
Pierre, подскажите, пожалуйста.
Pierre, can you please tell us so the type and the type of green spaces that can be planted within a city, do they have an influence on health and air pollution, the decrease of air pollution?
Okay, well, this is a matter of many hours of discussion, and okay, let's take the problem from the origin, if you want. But most of the studies that we have developed in the last 30 years, 40 years, come from observations that they were done in the 70s, in the 80s, in different cities, in different places, in hospitals. And they, doctors in hospitals, they discovered that patients that they were exposed to more green space, they were leaving the hospital before patients that they were not exposed to green spaces, even if they had the same age, the same symptoms, the same kind of pathology. And this triggered the fact that, okay, we know that people exposed to green space and unexposed, they answer in a different way. But the fact is that at the end, we do not know what kind of green space we should have. So I go to your question, and for air pollution, yes, there are indications about what kind of trees and plants should be planted. But I want to be clear on this. You do not have to consider only air pollution, in the sense that it is true that there are some trees and plants that are able to absorb or to stop the dispersion of a pollutant. But in thinking about the health effects of green space, the strongest effect is on mental health. And so for mental health, I mean stress reduction, because you have a green space in front of you, because you can walk to a park. And even in experiments that were done years ago, and they're still doing these experiments, you have less stress because you are exposed to a large picture of a park. So even people that they have in front of their windows of the place where they were living, where there are no parks, but they have an advertisement with trees and parks, they benefited. And then people in laboratories exposed to green kind of natural environments, when seeing different pictures, they were a much positive answer from the brain. So there are a lot of experiments they are doing. So in this sense, yes, there is a list of plants and trees that is suggested in a way or in another as better for air pollution reduction. But you have to consider that okay, this is just for air pollution, but the reduction of air pollution, and here I'm even more sincere, is not so big. At the moment, we are even out. I'm not sure 100% about the calculation that were done. We know that there are different ways, the mechanisms by which the plants and the trees absorb and modify air pollution. In some cases, they just stop the dispersion. In other cases, they are with the stomata, with the plants, is able to absorb the particle. But if I'm not wrong, I haven't seen any study, but I can be wrong on this. But the impact on air pollution is on overall in a city is not so big, but it's very important, it's significant. So can be 1%, for example, reduction because of the presence of green space. So a city has a level of 100. If there is a green space, a city without green space has 100 levels of air pollution, everything is asphalt and buildings. Then if you have green spaces there located well, you can have a 10%, so you go from 100 to 90. That's a difference anyway. I mean, it's just sorry, you go from 100 to 99. You have a 1% and it's real decrease. And for some places highly densely inhabited, this is already something. I show you for the air pollution modeling that a big country that has a level of 11 for PM2.5, going from 11 to 10, you can have even 65,000, I don't remember exactly the number, premature death avoided because going from 11 to 10. So these small numbers are not negligible at all. And that's only a small part of the work that you have to do as planners and public health people on green space. But I think I can move to the software. I don't know if I have answered the question. Anyway, let me know.
Thank you very much indeed, Pierre, for your answer. Also, we have another question appearing from one of our participants. Was there any studies about green space in Japan? Did anybody study Japanese efforts getting more and more green space? Also, could you evaluate the impact from creating more pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure within the green zone using that software?
Okay, so the second question we go to the I will answer opening the software. Okay, so but the first question on Japan is an important question. In Japan, because of cultural reasons, historical reasons, it's an isolated island, and there's been a culture of contact with nature that has been very, very strongly developing along the centuries. And there are many studies that were published on the effects and the way people are taking care of green space. Also because there is a very high density in terms of population in some cities and in some areas. It's highly populated. So there are many studies. Most of them are in Japanese, so it's not easy to go and see the results. But there are, I would say, at least in the last 10 years, I have seen interesting studies also in English. And there is a dialogue among scientists now also to incorporate and to elaborate together the tradition that they have had on gardens and green space in Japan. So this is a very good question, and there is I haven't put in the references that I share with you in this PowerPoint references to Japan, but there is for sure there are 2 or 3 papers that I have in mind that are maybe of interest. But the most important thing is that the fact that being exposed to a different culture with the Japanese culture, also at the scientific level, has indicated a different way also to think about nature. Here, well, we don't have time, but obviously the discussion should go also on more philosophical aspects of the relation between humans and nature. The fact that we exploit nature to a level in which nature at the end is not really giving us any benefits. And it's not only exploitation, it's the fact that we are part of the natural environment. So this is a more philosophical, but there's a lot of implications in how we see our environment, okay? And I hope I've answered on the Japanese, but I can later I can check a couple of papers that I know that are really very interesting and send to the organizers the references. On the other aspects of walking and cycling, I will go with it in a moment. So we have all this knowledge that we have, all the discussions that we are doing. We wanted to have a kind of box. We wanted to have an instrument where all the things I'm saying are put there. So whenever we need to go in a city, whenever we need, I don't know, a teacher in a school addressing the health impacts of green spaces, we wanted to have a tool. But we also have thought that we didn't want to just do Wikipedia, a kind of internet thing that you just go there and see a lot of text and graphs. We thought that we made for 2 years, we have been scanning the internet, checking if there were software and tools for planners and for public health people on green spaces. And we found that there were few things available, few things done in Europe, in the United Kingdom, and things done in the United States, in Canada, but there was not much. And so in a very important field as green space, land use and health, we didn't find tools for the public health people, for the planners to think about this issue. That's why we decided to do Green UR. And we got funds from the German government in 2016, and we have already started the work before on green spaces with the colleagues in Bonn, and there is one colleague, Andrei Egorov, a Russian that is now working in the United States, that also work a lot on building indicators for green spaces. So this is the interface of Green UR, and I don't know if I can share my screen, but I can probably let me see if. Do you see the QGIS screen?
We do see it, but oh yes, we can see that.
I don't know if you see. I mean, I'm in QGIS, so this is a geographical information system software. Yeah, exactly. That's my screen, I think. Okay. So I have put the QGIS in Russian just to give you an idea that GIS or geographical information systems are you have them in any language. So people work with these routinely, daily, hour by hour, every day. In planning, people that doing maps. So these are one of the most used software in the world is our geographical information system. What we have done, we have there is a project that is you can download for free a GIS, and it's QGIS it's called. And I have now put it in Russian. And here for QGIS we have prepared a plugin. So I have now just pushed the button of Green UR, and the idea was to have people that are not very familiar with the GIS being able at least to move and understand issues related to green spaces and health. I go back to the slide. I don't know if you see my slide now. Okay, now I can go. If you see the GIS, I will work in GIS now. So forget about the slides. So I am in a GIS, and So for those familiar with GIS, you need maps, basically. So how do you put in relation green space and health? Let me see if I have a project here that we can. Okay, I have a Dutch city in the Netherlands, Maastricht, and one thing that you have to start thinking is about the fact that in GIS you have data that are in different formats, but mainly, basically, they are or pixels, so they are digital information like the camera. When you take a picture, you produce, small square raster cells. So that's one format, and the other format is polygons, it's lines, and are polygons and lines. But let's keep these technical aspects, and let's go to the important thing. You remember, in air pollution, you need to have the levels of air pollution, the population that is exposed to air pollution, and then other background information. In green space is similar. So you need to, first of all, you need to decide an area where you're working. And here I've decided to work with the city of Maastricht. You need to have the population living in the city. And once you have this information, then you have to decide, I was mentioning before quite quickly, what kind of information you have for the green space. Could be that you have satellite data from, here we have the example of the European Commission, the European Environmental Agency. They have satellite data that are available now quite in a very open and they cover a lot of different countries. And usually with satellite images, you produce the so-called NDVI, so Normalized Vegetation Index. And these are, at the moment, with all the caveats, with all the problems that we have with NDVI, it's a format that is used quite regularly, also in epidemiological studies. And the other thing that I am pointing here in the software is the fact that you have also availability of data for free on the internet from OpenStreetMap project, where people all over the world are putting data about land use. So there you can download information about parks and gardens. And another thing that you have many times in many cities is the fact that you have data from the master plan. So the people working in a city, they usually have a GIS where they have the map with the land use of their city. This is almost in most of the European, Russian countries, there are this data. There are difficulties to have this data in places where there are no a master plan or where the urban planning department is weak. So in many African countries, these data are not available, and that's a problem. But it's a problem relatively because now with satellite images, you can, in a way or another, you can have an idea of the park. So once you have all these kind of images, you can work on understanding how much of green space is in the place where you are, and this is the first indicator. It's the main indicator for many aspects in order to do some comparisons, and it's at the discussion that you will have with the planners, as I was mentioning before. In some places, they will tell you cemeteries are green space. In other places, they will tell you, no, it's not a green space. In some places, they will tell you a private garden, it will be considered a green space for the city. In other places, they will tell you, no, a private garden is private. We do not have access. People cannot walk and cycle there, for example. And this is quite important. The moment you need to say, okay, I just have the green space. I know more or less how many how much is the percentage of green space in my place, but I'm very interested in knowing how many people are living in a buffer for the green space. I did a mistake. Sorry, here I wanted to launch a calculation, but I didn't put the population that is living. If you see this screen, is giving you an idea of the fact that we want to calculate how many people are living in buffers, so surrounding green spaces, where I have set up the minimum size of green space as half hectare. So I'm not considering small pockets. This is also a discussion that we, epidemiologists, public health people, and green space planners, they should do. And then I'm thinking about a buffer of 300 meters because, and I start the answer of the second question that I received before. Walking and cycling, people usually walk to a park if the park is not, 5 kilometers away, but if it is 300 or 400 meters. This is also, if you think about transport, the planning of transport, the stops of buses or metro stations, they do considerations about how many people can walk until a certain distance. They do not put underground subway stations 5 kilometers away each other. They just have to put them, 1 kilometer or 900 meters. So there is a science there just to understand how you can attract people, obviously. And it's the same for green space. If a park is very far away, I will not go to it. If I have an highway between me and the park, I will not cross the highway. So there's a lot of these micro planning discussions that I'm sure you know. And so this is something that you have to consider. Let me see if I can stop here the analysis. No. Okay. And okay, yes. Sorry, I made a mistake. It's my fault. And I will restart it again. I don't know if you see my screen. I will finish now the presentation of the slides just to, and then I will go back to QGIS. I have already opened it. So with the slides that I have prepared are basically telling you that it is possible to think about land use and green space and health from a different perspective, not only the one of planners, but also from the public health perspective. And this is beneficial for planning. I would say planners have this in mind. And the best urban planners are the planners that they have already thinking about the well-being and the possibility for people to use different parts of the city. This is a first thing. So the other, I can skip this slide, but I want to show you the architecture of GreenUR, just to have you an idea of the fact that we want to address the complexity I was mentioning at the beginning of the presentation. So we are not scared, we are not afraid of the fact that we are living in a very difficult, in terms of modeling world. We can do it. I mean, science and scientists are on our side. There are people spending years, 10 years, 20 years, following cohort of inhabitants in cities to see the changes in their health because there is one park less or more. And we have now, I am showing you the architecture of GreenUR. So this is the things we are at the moment experimenting, implementing. The software is not available for download, and it was supposed to be available this year, but because of COVID, we had to postpone probably next year. So this gave us the possibility to do more tests and more experiments. And at the moment, so we are working with the mortality, we are working with the mental health effects, and also with ecosystem services. And a third part that I want to mention, because it's related to the question before, is about active transport. And ecosystem services, I have just brought a slide, is a very large category of effects that green spaces have on our environment, and then indirectly they affect health. I want to just go on I don't know if I can share again quickly the QGIS. Let me know if you see it.
Yes, we can see, Pierre.
Okay, and before I say, okay, we need to define the region where we work in, the city where we work in, the population living there, not different from other risk analysis that you do, but here then you need the green space. And the definition of green space is a lot of discussions with planners, public health people, all kind of discussions are probably there. And then once you have these ingredients that are not easy because you're working in a GIS, you can move to the to kind of calculations. I have done before a first calculation, but I did not. I did not specify the population that I wanted to work with. But something that I have also here is active transport. So how much green space can help in for active transport? In a minute, I will answer to this question that requires a long time. Active transport, so walking and cycling, because of green space, we still do not evidence, although all the information that we get from all the studies is that green space is helping in having better walking and cycling of people. And so for sure, in few years, we are going in that direction. And we have already some models that do this. In here, we are trying to have a model where what we do is the following. We model where people are living, and then where people are going, where where people are working, where people are going for shopping, and where are the parks. So the movement of people basically are influenced by the fact that if you have a nice park between you and shopping, you will probably do not take car, and you will go by walking and cycling. And then so we have we model at the moment the effects of green space on walking by thinking about the attractiveness of a place for the population. So this module that we are experimentally testing runs in 20 minutes, half hour sometimes, because it needs to go and check all the possible movements of the people. So you have for those that work in planning, you know that you have to calculate the shortest path to go from one place to another. So you need basically an origin destination, and then between your origin and your destination, you need to know what is in between. So to cut it short, again, what we do is at the end we compare how much you have for the population of green space and how much you have for the population for moving from one place to another in terms of attractiveness. And so we make the comparison between if we have more green space, how many more people are attracted to walk to a place. And this was tested in Maastricht, and we are going on with this kind of testing currently. I think, this really deserves 1 hour or even 2 hours of discussions, because here for walking in, you need to define the land use. You need to understand where the pedestrian can go and when the car are going. So there are these two alternatives, and once you have them, then you can calculate how much attractive is a place and how much unattractive is a place, and the attractiveness is related to aesthetic values that you enter in a kind of subjective judgments, or also on safety of the roads, if they are very busy or not. So there are different variables and that you have to consider. So this is I'm showing you and sharing with you the screen about the fact that at the end, if you have a place where there is a lot of green space, then you know that there is an additional benefit for the people, because there is you can add, I don't know, for a population you can add, I don't know, 3-4 kilometers, 5 kilometers a week more of walking and cycling due to green space. And so I hope I have answered all the question, and I think I am running out of time. I'm not sure what time is it. And
Pierre, спасибо вам.
Pierre, thank you very much for this presentation, for presenting the program. We hope that soon Green UR will be completely ready, and it will be translated into Russian, because this program allows us to get outcomes and results on many different interesting indicators, and it will be interesting to try to apply it not only in Moscow but also in other regions of the Russian Federation, who are also taking part in this workshop. And I hope that maybe you will share a link to the documents on different studies, and maybe also send a link to the program, even though it's not complete yet, so that we could probably try to use it.
Yeah, we are now finalizing a prototype, and we will test it all October and November. But I think by the end of the year, we can have a discussion, and you can test the new version that we are currently finalizing. And we had for the testing, we had the World Urban Parks Association that has asked us to test the software, and so we will do a test with them in the next 2-3 months. And the World Urban Parks Association, I think it takes people that are in all the main cities in the world. There's a lot of people from Japan, for example, and so for us that will be the first big test. So far, we have tested the software in very specific cities where we have been working. But I'm really happy that there is interest and to have a collaboration with you because of the tradition of studies and work that there is in Russia. And one thing that I want to say is that for air pollution, maybe some kind of work can be done virtually, but with the GIS, obviously you cannot do things in real time, and it's quite complicated, and people have to sit down together. There's no way to run these things virtually. I have to be totally honest. Yeah, that can be done. Everything can be done, but tele planning, I don't know if can be done honestly. So I will try to. I mean, let's have a discussion. We can share with you the plugin. So it's nothing that you really install. You have to download the QGIS and then you put a plugin. But maybe I hope that there will be a possibility for some of you coming to Bonn or some other expert coming to Moscow, or I don't know. But thank you very much for the interest on our work.
Можно вопрос
May we ask Pierre a question?
Irina?
Irina, yes, good day, Boris Alexandrovich. We are happy to see you. Of course, you can ask Pierre a question. Yes. Dear Pierre, here's my question. You mentioned Andrei Yegorov. I worked a lot with Andrei Yegorov. First, we were working in International Bank, and after that, when he was at Harvard School of Public Health, where he was doing a thesis, very interesting thesis. I know his job very well, and after that, he resurfaced in Bonn, and then I lost contact with him, and I do visit Bonn, and there's always a lot of work, and I could not trace him down. Would you please send us a contact? You mentioned that he's in Russia, and if you could forward his contact to the people that put together the workshop or to me directly, then I will do my best to bring Andrei into our massive project in Moscow. It is massive and interesting with regards to air pollution, with videography, and we have a massive cartography school in Russia, and we understand the GIS system very well. So just to make sure you know that there are a lot of stuff going on in Russia. We had huge publication about the green areas in Russian cities that was published by cartography people from Moscow University. Your offer of collaboration is really real, and I would like to be the one that pulls the line, that toils the line, and I could make sure I can facilitate putting together the conference. By the way, next year we're planning a conference in Bonn, and I'll be part of a group with regards to health, improving health. And when I will do my own presentation today, I will speak a lot about the open green areas.
Well, thank you very much. And Andrei is now in North Carolina. He's running experiments, putting electrodes on people and measuring the saliva of people walking in forests and parks. So he's doing a lot of research on green space. We started together years ago. And I study cartography also. So I know that the Russian school that I was mentioning before, I know that there's a big tradition. So I will be very happy to have a collaboration, and I think we talk the same language. And so once you are in front of a map, I think we can understand each other very well. And this is also a message for public health people. They usually are very scared to be in front of a map. But, you know, a map gives you so many information about where the people are living, what kind of environmental exposure they have. So I hope this COVID time will stabilize in a way that we can meet and we can collaborate. So I'm really thank you very much for all your attention. I hope I was clear, and I hope to see you soon again.
Thank you very much indeed. It was really interesting. I'm glad to hear that Andrei is in North Carolina. They have excellent facility there. I was there. I visited there. They have talented people working there. And I'm pretty sure Andrei became an integral part of their scientific community.
Борис Александрович, с вашего...
Boris Alexandrovich, would you allow us to forward your contacts to Pierre for further coordinating of your mutual work? Yes, by all means, we're completely open to interaction, and I believe that these types of international projects enrich our studies, and us in Russia here, we do have these fundamental faculties that historically were very strong in that research, and I understand and I'm familiar with works of Russian cartographers. We indeed speak the same language, so it would be really easy to put together in contact, and thank you very much indeed for your wonderful presentation. Allow me, my respected colleagues. Hello, yes, Irina, hello. We do not know each other personally, but allow me to introduce myself.
Professor at the Ryazan Medical State University. And I wrote my question and my invitation directly to the Pierre and to the colleagues in the chat. Shall I repeat it for all of us? So Pierre, I'm very much thankful for you, for your classes, and the methodological processes are very good, and I hope they will be very perspective for the common researchers, for my colleagues, because we are working in the same field. I'm by my own the geographer and biologist, but now by some reasons I'm working at the medical university. So, and we are our common theme. And now the common article by the title Methodological Potential of the Green Territories in Educational and Public Health Spheres. So the article is ready, and we are thinking about the international journal. Then we can publish our article, because it's a little bit difficult. Of course, we found some high-citated journals in the Scopus and Web of Science, and we see that the theme is very important now and very much appreciated in European society and USA, but it's quite difficult to, to explain for the medicians in Russia that the green effect and effect of the green and blue territories in our health is really and extremely high. So, and as soon as we wanted to be healthy and happy and to live a long, healthy life, so I do invite you, Pierre, and the colleagues in the common collaboration, and we can make common articles and manuscripts as well. We are working under the methodological prospects because we are working with people with diseases and disabled people as well in the medical university, of course. So if you are all interested, and especially you, Pierre, in working under this field, in common work, we will be just happy and appreciate you for collaboration and for correspondence. We are direct emails. You can see, and the members, you can see my email, my private email, Harmony 19721911 gmail.com. So, and one more, Violetta Chornaya. So we'll be very appreciative for collaboration for all of you. Thank you. Thank you for attention and the classes as well.
Thank you very much. I'm very interested in the work that you do, and it's obviously you publish in Russian. There's a lot of work done in Russian, and it will be in this area of work. It will be probably good to have a summary. I'm thinking loudly, a summary of the work done in Russian, because I'm not a Russian speaker, but I have seen also with some other collaborators, there's a lot of work done in forestry, for example, a lot of work done by cartographers on green spaces that is unavailable outside. Unfortunately, we all know that English is a kind of, the language that is all over for scientific publications, but probably we just we need to see what has been published in Russian, and I have a question if there is a summary of all the work done, and this will be very good, because probably with WHO we can think about doing a collaboration about a report or something for other people to know about this work. I know there are many people working in also doing research with in parks, in green spaces, in urban forestries. I know this because Andrei told me, and other scholars also told me that they are Russian speaker, and so there are many areas of work that I think we can collaborate. So I'm very happy for this opportunity. As I mentioned, by the end of the year, we should have this test done with the World Urban Parks Association. That is a huge, you can see in the internet, the World Urban Parks really, the main cities more cities are putting together. They're discussing, these people are really pragmatic. So there are people that are running big parks in cities, and they need to know to exchange each other information about what kind of trees they have, what kind of expenditure they have. So we started with them because we know that they are the people that are really working exactly on trees. But the idea is then next year we can see if we can meet. And I will be delighted. Also, I'm not alone. I mean, there are other people working together. Other colleagues and also experts, and it will be good to have a larger network also with experts from Russia working together.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much. And we already published 3 articles in the Scopus Q3, Q3 and Q2 journals. With our colleagues from Portugal. In the International Healthcare Management Journal. And they decided that our field of researchers is quite new, and our articles listed like innovative. I will be just very appreciated for you and for Boris Revich as well, if we will find the way and the possibility to be common in this field of researchers. So thank you so much once again.
Thank you.
Спасибо. Спасибо, коллеги.
Thank you, colleagues.
Violetta, спасибо вам большое за...
Violetta, thank you very much indeed for your interest that you have shown to our workshops. I am standing by to to forward Pierre's contacts to you, should he find that acceptable. If Pierre would agree to that, I will forward his contacts to your email for your further collaboration. Irina, I would appreciate it very much. I think that is a common interest because, unfortunately, in Russia, the attention to such questions and dealing with infrastructure on green zones and green area for active physical activity and recreation and approach and access to the people and access to such territories is unfortunately not enough attention is being paid. And I am a member of ecological committee between Russia and Belarus. I travel to Belarus a lot. We have a lot to learn from people from Belarus, and the COVID situation shows that we are moving in the right direction when we are developing our own regional areas and developing their infrastructures. Thank you for your participation. Goodbye.
Уважаемые коллеги, сейчас
Dear colleagues, we have
лекцию
heard
Пьера. По программе у нас запланированы
wonderful Pierre's presentation. We have two more presentations today. Presentation from Boris Alexandrovich Revich, that you now know him. He is Russian and Soviet scientist and a famous specialist in epidemiology and hygiene of surrounding areas. He works with Russian Academy of Science. He has been awarded Nobel Peace Prize in 2007. Boris Alexandrovich, good day again. My dear colleagues, thank you very much. Could you please turn off Pierre's presentation because I cannot start mine?
Сейчас я попробую.
Да, Борис Александрович, сейчас мы это
Yeah, please, we'll try to solve this problem now.
Не пускают.
Well, they don't let me in yet.
Нет еще.
No, I cannot do it.
Видно?
Can you see the presentation? No, well, our technical specialists will try to solve this problem right now.
Вы знаете, пока
Well, you know, while they're working on this, well, I see there is a notification that I have already launched the presentation. Well, I saw the list of participants, the one that I received from the department, and there are only 4 people that are on this list. Maybe I'm wrong, because mainly my lecture was designed to focus on the people that are the participants, depending on where they come from. And at the same time, I can see that on the list that there are 4 people, Saratovska, Rычkova, and they are very interestingly are from Moscow and not other cities. So if there are any other cities, so please specify that, because if it's just Moscow, then it doesn't matter. So this is my request. Can you hear me? Yes, sure, we can hear you.
Так, вот Мария Галанина отписалась, что она из
Yes, Maria Galanina has just indicated that she is from Moscow. Unfortunately, we cannot see in the chat which regions people are coming from. But for all I know, that the participants are from all over Russia. Okay, it's all clear. So can you see my screen? Is it all fixed now?
Я ее включил. Одну секунду. Вчера. Сейчас, подождите опять.
It is on, but let me check just a minute.
Одну минуту. Давайте я буду говорить, чтобы не задерживать.
Okay, let me start speaking so that
Я считаю, что
nobody is waiting for me. I think that it was very lucky that the way it was, this workshop was organized by the department, and this is what Pierre was talking about. So can you see my presentation now?
сейчас я на полный сделаю.
Well, let me switch to full screen.
Так видно?
Да.
Все, окей.
Okay, now you can see it.
Очень хорошо, что
And it is really great that Pierre gave us such an interesting presentation on green spaces, and also Mrs. Chodner was absolutely right when when she mentioned that not enough attention is paid to this field, and especially how important it is to public health. And this is exactly what I would like to talk about. At this workshop, the European Bureau of the World Health Organization presented 3 very interesting projects, and my presentation is also designed to cover these 4 challenges that are now being tackled by the European scientific community, so that the final goal would be to understand how all of it can be implemented in Russia, and not only in Moscow, but in different other cities in Russia. But to begin with, since we're talking about health, I would like to show you this very general slide, which gives a general idea of such a reliable indicator, which we hear almost every day about these days. And this is the indicator of mortality. And the Russian society is so used to this term. And being an epidemiologist, this is what I work on, and this is a reference term which can be compared to other indicators. And when we talk about the problems of the Russian cities and also megapolises, so the most the issue that should be studied most reliably is the state of health, since the risks are very high, especially in big cities. And this is one of the 3 directions that the whole workshop is built around. So the air quality index, the green space planting in order to reduce the air pollution, and also heat waves that are very important in terms of their negative impact on health, which Muscovites know very well when they remember the extremal heat period of 2010. We don't know what is happening now, but some of the years showed also very extreme temperatures, and there were not so many publications on that, unfortunately. So this slide is important because it shows the mortality levels in the Russian Federation in such cities as Moscow, Rostov, St. Petersburg, and unfortunately, how much we lag behind the Western world, not to mention Japan or Sweden, but also Eastern Europe. And actually, the lag is expanding if we compare to the situation of 30 years ago, before the very famous reorientation of our country happened, and we became the Russian Federation. So this is my opinion, and maybe some other specialists can see differently and can probably emphasize different risks for the environment. And this is where I need to point out to you, dear listeners, that there is a great understanding among us on what the environment is. And also on how the WHO interprets it. The environment is not only air and water and all these traditional things, but it also comprises public spaces. It is the low mobility of population, the barrier space for disabled people, and many other factors. So when we talk about the qualification of risks, we should always analyze the 2 main directions. The first one would be the the geographical and the populational exposure to risks. So when I first started working in this field in epidemiology, when I published the textbook for universities, so these the questions of exposure of air pollution, and that's what my thesis was devoted to, and particularly the air pollution from transport. And of course, the situation with transport is different now, different from what happened 50 years ago. And that's why the World Health Organization puts air pollution on first place. And there are more and more publications and studies that talk about the danger of PMs and their cancerogenic effect, which the World Cancer Organization will probably soon include the PMs as one of the key cancerogenic substances. And the second place, again, it is according to my opinion, is the climate change. And unfortunately, we cannot assess it the same way as the WHO assesses it. There are many risks, and they're starting from public health, where the world level would be at 10%. For Sweden, I would call it 5%. In Russia, in some mono cities, the ones that I had experience with, the cities with really high levels of air pollution, the percentage would probably go up to 20% and so on. But environmental factors are all combined there, and it is very important when the WHO talks about environmental factors, it includes all of those. That's why the third place, in my opinion, should be the set of all these spatial factors. For example, the restrictions in receiving public services. Well, I'm particularly working on the Arctic, and we did a very interesting job on the accessibility of medical help. And we collaborated on that with our colleagues among Moscow cartography specialists. And before I move on, the details on air and water details in spaces, I want to show you this slide, which is a spatial risk factor and a very unfortunate organization of public traffic and a very high instance of traffic accidents. So the general trend is positive because the trends are going down. Unfortunately, I cannot see the full screen, and in the bottom of it there must be some numbers on the standardized mortality in European cities, mortality from from traffic accidents. Well, there are many other problems of our cities. The psychosocial problems, the abuse of alcohol while driving, even though there are the fines are growing for this kind of for this.
Вот я в списке не увидел, что здесь присутствует. А нет, извините, Вот Галанина Мария Михайловна, она как раз из Центра управления дорожным движением Москвы. Я думаю, что ей это будет интересно. Значит, вот госпожа Аксенова — это директор нового института, который создал департамент здравоохранения. Замечательно, что создан этот институт. Значит, он как раз называется Институт общественного здоровья и менеджмента. Мы такой институт у нас существует на федеральном уровне, так известной ЦЕНИ, ОЗЭ и информатизации здравоохранения. Вот теперь дошла очередь до Москвы. И огромная, конечно, благодарность правительству Москвы, которое на это выделило деньги. И вы видите, что вот снижение динамики ДТП в Москве происходит. Вот это вторая строчка, если видите. Я не могу сказать о проекте, который вот был сделан при участии вот моей лаборатории. Очень интересный проект. К сожалению, публикаций пока нет.
It is a very interesting project. There are no publications that came from Department of Transportation. I think that is a perfect example for what and how cities should conduct their transport policy from the point of assessment health risks. That project was done by the Institute of City Health with Auto and Road Health Institute and Space Exploration Health and the Organization of Assessing of Future Development Trends. We put together this forum like we were studying the children endothelial materials, the solar expansion, radon emanations into air. Unfortunately, the Ministry of Natural Resources approved a metallurgical aspects that were not enough informational aspect to it. We were using models that were not top shelf. We have to switch to model air gut that is used all over the world. And finally, we realized, we were very happy to see that the risk went down by 13% and lower risk of cancerogenics even more than that. 13% is a huge number. To get that 13%, they had to spend billions rebuilding pavement, new subway and metro station, intensive development of public transportation system, and a lot of other things. Of course, there was a lot of educational work being done, and of course, Department of
На следующем слайде
Eco
вам показать
Ecological Department as well. Here, I wanted to show you a slide. It has specific relationship to a very interesting ideology that's been around for 20 years. That's an ideology of putting together the basic global rating as well as disease burden. It was an international bank unified project as well as Harvard School of Health. Why is it so important? Because some antagonists were drawn together with the specialists in public health. These are kind of different fields, and if I'll have enough time, I will say a few words about that. Now, why is it that important? So, health is always massive burden on population. We got to know this last summer. We realized that how many human lives were lost because our Russian health system was not ready for that virus. Today it was COVID-19-20. Another virus will come in the future, and this is not my opinion, but that's an opinion of experts on viral diseases. There's a huge depot of various viral threats in Russia. We have massive health services with a lot of epidemiology, scientific institutes that are placed strategically in different cities: Saratov, Astrakhan, Tomsk, Moscow, now the Far East, Khabarovsk, they're slightly different, and so on and so forth. Nevertheless, notwithstanding that massive scientific foundation, there was not enough beds in hospitals. They took away the beds because the viral infections were going down. We lost 18% of infectious doctors dealing with infections. We had excessive death toll on 500,000. I'm not saying those who died from COVID, but I'm saying excessive death toll. COVID is basic death for those who are suffering from pulmonary diseases, cardiovascular diseases. We lost a lot of people. We were pushed back few years back with this integrated rate of expected lifespan, how much time it will take us to pull ourselves out of it. 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. We are right now in a demographical pit for different reasons, difficult reasons, political reasons, economical reasons. We can't get out of this pit because we have not enough newborn babies. We have bad problem with immigrations. You know that people that come to us are not the people that we would like to see moving to us. And those we would like to see, they move to different countries with better economical situation, where they can make more money. So when here I have on my shelf the first edition, you know that I really value this book. It's like a namesake that given to me by one of the concept founders. So they use this as a serious time constraint. They put it together, they break it down into categories and time categories. And there was this interesting brochure from International Projection Bank and also another organization for digitization of health department did a lot of work in Russia, and they have shown the air pollution to be, I'm sorry, that's around the world, it takes 4th place, but they showed it on the 7th place in Russia. In the entire world, it's on the 4th place, since there's a lot of pollution in Oriental countries, especially China, even though it's getting better in China. Also, India and Indonesia, some of the Latin countries in South America. But if you could look at the 1st place and then on 5th place, and, well, before kidney dysfunction, before kidney failure, all this as metabolical problem, human being suffering from high cholesterol in our blood, because it is totally connected to cardiovascular and gastronomical system. We understand that our diets are not well balanced. And the 3rd place is dietary risks from unbalanced business. 2nd place is tobacco product. It's a little bit less for us, but with us it's a little bit higher. With alcohol abuse, if we would move that compared to this table, the way we did it in a project that's been up 10 years ago, that was about on the 6th place. Then air pollution was after alcohol abuse. Right now, the situation's slightly different, even though the alcohol abuse during the pandemic did not go up, which was expected. And then, by the way, the psychologists and the experts that are dealing with problems of alcohol, they immediately predicted that. So my dream is that sometime the rating like that would be published with respect to our country. Something is being done in that respect. Few times we were visited in Moscow, was visited by the head of the Health Metric Institute from the United States, and they were doing the workshops together with World Health Organization, but unfortunately for now we don't have the information. All the experts are waiting for the information to resurface and when the data will be published. Now, how does any pollutant start affecting our life? What is the standard? I'm talking not just about pollutants, but also some derogatory factors. First of all is, of course, mortality. Here's what this pyramid is about. On top, we have people that are dying, traffic accidents, mortality, but also we have, well, not exactly adequate when compared to other countries when we have traffic accident mortality measured. We measure it one way, Western countries measure it the other way. Now these methodologies are going closer to each other. The susceptibility to diseases. When I'm doing the lectures in the medical institutes and I'm asking my colleagues, and they're not just medical specialists, highly educated, but also highly experienced practice doctors, when I'm asking them, how do you deal with disease spread statistics? It is actually kind of hard for me to get them to rate it as C, because they were ready to fail us. But somehow I get them to give us C minus. We had a lot of statistics in the USSR. I worked a lot with it, and it was absolutely picture perfect. I was doing a presentation in a huge international conference after the Minister of Health from Egypt, who was educated in International Friendship University in Moscow, and he was asking, Boris, how is the statistic they used to have for medical statistics back in the USSR? The subclinical pathologies, these experts, they know there's a lot of symptomatics and syndromes they have to deal with, and then the psychological variativity of a local obscure meaning, and a lot of people use that in this quasi-scientific researches. Another thing that is very reliable metric that I was relying upon and using it when we're talking about heavy metals, about the substantial pollutants within the metabolic systems. And I asked Pierre about the Andrei Yegorov, and Pierre said that he's in North Carolina. It is excellent organization there. They have excellent labs, and they constantly, just like European laboratories, they develop those biomonitoring methods. And I remember I was reading a lot of publications about those methods. Now, okay, where's my screen? Perhaps I clicked something wrong here. Give me a minute. I can't see it. And you can't see it, right? Yes, Boris Alexandrovich, we cannot see your screen. Right. I do apologize. I'm looking for it. Let me do it again. I think it'll respond.
Видно?
Can you see it? No, unfortunately, no. Give me a second, one more time. I do apologize. Give me a minute. I'm going to leave the full screen mode. Can you hear me? Yes, we can hear you and we can see you, Boris Alexandrovich. Yeah, you see me, but you can't see my presentation. Let me do this then. I will leave the full screen mode. And once again, I'll start presentation, and while I'll be talking about this pyramid. Also, aside from this pyramid, here's what is interesting. There was this development received. It was developed in other countries where they were displaying that with respect to not as a sphere of the measures to derogatory factors of, but also with respect to, wait, right now, 1 minute, with respect to, now, hang on, with respect to, for example, to PMs or to black carbons, to that very unpleasant black carbon, which is directly related to the highest level of health impact. Right. Now, how is it?
Не видим до сих пор.
We can't see it still. Now. Yes, I can see. Right now, I'm going to start it up once again. I do apologize. Right now, I'm going to close it. So, on top of those aggregated metrics and data that I was talking about, then, well, there's a way to use much more fragile or specific elements, for example, relating to surroundings and how it affects cardiovascular diseases. There's a major problem in our country, these cardiovascular diseases, and also there's a high mortality rate from, by the way, to be fair, recently, thank God, it went down a bit. So, to speak of the strokes, then, of course, it is excellent that in Russia they have founded the stroke centers, all thanks to previous health minister Skvartsova, who accomplished that. Now, how is my presentation now? Did it appear? No, Boris Alexandrovich. Now? Well, it has to reappear. That's it. I do apologize for this. So, I wanted to show this particular slide when I was talking about this black carbon particle matters and how they affect the human health. In order to understand the effect of air pollution, I put together this slide as a critical acclaim of federal project called Clean Air, which was part of altogether massive ecology project. It was what? Our technical staff asked us to turn around the presentation. Yes, I did that. Just give me a second. Here. Yes. So, as you can see, in those cities that were a part of National Project Clean Air, from what I understand, what I believe the beginning was absolutely useless, uneducated. Nobody had an understanding what is an atmosphere, how atmosphere gets polluted, what's the landscape impact. They put together using a lot of red tape, and it actually looks like what I had to deal with in 60s and 70s, about 50 years ago. Horrible project, and by the way, the Russian Congress had a lot of critique for that, and I was very happy that this project involved Rospotrebnadzor and very smart person, white person, Anna Yurievna Popova, an excellent expert. She figured out that indeed that project has to be initiated, and she allowed her institute to partake in this, of course, considering certain clues and clauses. And now this institute is not dealing with a lot of garbage that's being emanated, but they specifically deal with dangerous pollutants. The risk factor assessment in Russia is really well developed, and not direct epidemiological research, which I'm dealing with for years and years, but unfortunately the top shelf experts in that segment, and my dear friend Professor Avoliani is not with us anymore. He died from complications of COVID. Why I feel that slide is important. I want to share with you the mortality rate with problematic cities where in reality it's really difficult to contain such mortality rate, like the city of Chita. No matter what they deal with, what they do, it is in the pit. It sits right in the valley, deep valley between two mountain ridges. I do apologize. It is in a deep valley between two ridges. No matter how less CO2 emanates, you can bring it down and down. There's nothing you can do. When I was a young scientist dealing with my thesis, I was doing lectures in this. They used to have in the USSR the society called The Knowledge, and they were talking how horrible it is in Tokyo, and traffic cops have to wear masks. Tokyo is a wonderful city. I've been there many times. I don't have old photos, but we can look for old photos to see how was Tokyo back then and how it is now. Okay, Tokyo had massive traffic problems, just like Los Angeles. But, for example, city of Pittsburgh, industrial city in the U.S., it was choking on its own fumes. And over there, the administration, and both state and federal, went down the right path. They created a massive system in their country, the super anti-smog systems. I know this system perfectly well. I was there. What they do is the fines are so huge for air pollution. They bankrupt the industry. So the industrial companies have to leave the town. They have to leave the grounds because they're going bankrupt. And then now they have areas that are opening up. Then they recultivate the ground. Actually, they got the companies to pay for it. That is not happening in a really problematic town. We barely evaded the Siberian catastrophe. I don't know how to call the right decree that Russian president signed. They had forwarded funds for rehabilitation. From what I understand, the people that was working there, they had an institute that was absolutely substandard. They wasted money. Again, the substandard education of our natural and ecological systems is causing this catastrophe. Rospotrebnadzor is no longer part of health ministry, where you understand the health ministry has a lot of research departments. So you have to clean up Chita, just like what they did in Pittsburgh. So what do we need to develop there? In Pittsburgh, they developed IT technology, pharmaceutical technology, and so on and so forth. Of course, to do that, you have to really clean up the place first. But that is a huge problem. The second problem, of course, is that Russia, there is no normal monitoring system in Russia. And first of all, the particle matter monitoring. The best monitoring system is in city of Moscow, of course, and every time I always say thanks to Yuri Mikhailovich Lushkov for funding the Mosecho monitoring system. I am eternally grateful to Evgenia Gennadievna Simotnikova, who was part of this workshop today. She was part of Mosecho monitoring. She was ahead. Now Polina Zakharova is doing that. These are highly educated women. They have degrees in physics, and they understand the nature of the problem. Unlike the MPR workers or Rosprirotnadzor workers who are very far from that. I give you some values about just by how much the PM is dangerous. And with long gone, dead now, Professor Valiani co-authored that with me. You can see the numbers. I think it's going up. Well, on Wednesday in Copenhagen, in European WHO branch, was presented a very important document about the Air Quality Committee published that document. That's my second favorite book. It was translated in its own time into Russian. We were promised from our colleagues in Bonn that in some time, again, that book will resurface. I believe that their advice will be a lot stricter on PM rather than the regulations that have been adopted by Rospotrebnadzor and City of Moscow that looks good right now overall with Russia in its background. When you compare it with the Eastern European countries and even some other European cities, the situation may go down. And I think, of course, very respected experts from the department, highly educated, they get this knowledge. Of course, I could not pass on showing you, as an epidemiology specialist, specific research that relates to health research. Of course, the bronchial asthma, I was dealing with that. It's going down in Russia, but you can see it's much higher than in Germany. And again, that is work of Professor Ilchenko. She's in the first medical university called Sechin Academy. That's where she is right now, and some other research. And of course, it is very important. Please pay attention that second paragraph, where we deal about the Sidelnikov research, we're talking about the psychological health. It's a huge problem that is really acute after COVID pandemic, and I will talk about COVID later, and you will understand why I will be talking about this. And once again, I am showing you the third paragraph. These are summarizing the project. I put it as a part of my presentation on purpose. A lot of my colleagues in different countries in the world, they really love it. First, I didn't get it, but then from the standpoint of educational faculty standpoint, it's a really good idea to run the same thesis few times in a different context. It's really primitive table, really old research, my very first research that was ever published in English, since at the time such publications were only confidential, and now that was an open research, and it deals with the important priority of considering the derogatory factors.
Ой. Что случилось?
С вопросами здоровья. Только вчера у меня была, хотела, значит, вот прийти ко мне на работу в мою лабораторию.
So just yesterday she wanted to join my lab, but the difficulties that she had to deal with while working on her thesis were not sufficient for working in an epidemiological lab. And also, so what shall we do in the cities where the pollution level is so high? And you can see that there are all kinds of diseases for the city population: diabetes, dementia, IHD, including breast cancer, which is now many people explain by low mobility, as well as colorectal cancer. So they're all due to the widespread of public transport, and this is what our department is dealing with, the Moscow transport. And once again, this is the question of what to do to get rid of the carbon pollution, which Russian Federation, unfortunately, is not going to decrease, but to increase. These are our internal problems. And here you can see the solar panels, which are unfortunately not in Russia, but in the world. And so talking about COVID, and this is what I would like to finalize my lecture with. So COVID has a very similar mechanism of influencing the human body. It's similar to these fine particles that are pollutants, and the risk factors are as high. And of course, in Moscow, there is a lack of green areas, and there are many other causes for this. And whoever is interested in getting more detailed information on the air conditions, the journal that our institute is publishing in Russian and English, they published my review on air pollution and COVID, because these studies have already been completed in different countries of the world, and it is a very powerful. There is a very powerful study that was conducted in the USA. They analyzed the mortality rate at 10%, at very high monitoring of fine particles. And the study is very interesting. The aerosols in air were particularly studied in big cities, and these aerosols are the carriers of the COVID virus, and it was proved by lab studies as well as off-lab studies. So talking of COVID, so all of us people who are over 60, as well as many others who now work remotely or are on lockdown, who are isolated in their homes, well, including students who studied online, as I get informed by my colleagues, the level of education has decreased sufficiently, and teachers have experienced many problems, including depression. And also our researchers have joined the investigation of this problem. And what is important to people in this situation, it is to see these green-blue spaces when we look through our window, and even some small research on that would be very much welcomed. And even to see a piece of something green is what people need, and that's why the prices for houses and buildings in green areas are very high at the moment. And that's why I wanted to demonstrate how important green spaces are. And I'm really happy that my colleagues at the Moscow University have now published a very interesting monography, including the cartography section with lots of maps. And you see in the final part here, I mentioned the Green program, which Pierre mentioned today, and it proves that the environmental situation in Moscow is not as favorable as we would want it to be. And another study by other researchers from Europe is already published, and they used a different approach. To a certain extent, they might have been influenced by me because we have already run several projects with Russian colleagues, including the monography, A Human in a Megapolis, and they used the indicator of pedestrian accessibility, and this is how much Moscow is popular now, is ranged at the moment. And to go back to this initial list that I received from the department, I saw that one of the participants is a specialist on forestry. And I was really happy that such an expert from the Ministry of Forestry of Penza region is among us, and I think it's always very interesting when there is a specific expert who understands a very specific field, and I wanted to demonstrate a very dark belt around the city of Nur Sultan. This city was named Zelenograd before in the Soviet times, and people of my generation probably remember that in the old days that there was a green belt around this city, and in one of my monographies we assess the pros and cons of this green belt around this city. So, to my huge disappointment, the recommendations of my colleagues that were developed many years ago have somehow disappeared. Well, it's been almost 46 years, and everybody forgot about them. And what I observe now in Moscow is this very incompetent changes, how trees are planted, how bushes are planted, and this only decreases noise and pollution and decreases the health risks. So I have written a huge article on this. I hope that it will be published next year. It focuses on public space planning and the risks that are not decreasing because public spaces are planned in a very wrong way. And our institution had publications on how competent urban planning should look like, but unfortunately all of it, much of it was ignored. And there are many different aspects, like the the shadow from buildings. So basically on this slide you can see what will happen with Moscow if green spaces will not be expanded. This is a study by a climatologist, Pavel Konstantinov. He works at the Epidemiological University, and I hope we will continue collaborating on and doing researches on many different cities. And back to the psychological consequences of the pandemic, I see that Professor Danilov is here. He is the head of the disease department. And not only international experts are dealing with this problem, but also our own domestic experts. And we hope that these risks will be considered in the National Adaptation Plan, which is now developed by the Ministry of Economy. And of course, the Ministry of Health and Rospotrebnadzor are mentioned there, and they should develop their proposals. And Russia is warming up faster than other countries, and other territories of Arctic is warming up faster than other territories of Russia. And this is a slide on how the heat levels will increase in our country in the near future. You can see the coloring. Well, this is what happened in Moscow in the summer of 2010. This is the model that we built together with our colleagues from the university in Carolina, the University of Ecological Medicine. Moscow suffered great harm, great losses, more than 10 billion rubles. Unfortunately, all of the Russian part of Russia could not be covered in this study. And, well, there are some smaller options of protection from heat, like different roof types, and these are the options that will be reviewed in Glasgow, where the World Climate Conference will take place on a very high level. I hope that a special representative of the President on Climate, together with experts, will participate in that conference. And to sum up, I would like to mention that maybe you will be interested in watching a movie by a famous Russian director on climate threats. And as far as I understand, I'm running out of time. Well, there are only 10 minutes. Boris Alexandrovich, thank you for a very interesting lecture. It was very detailed, and you reflected on many interesting issues. And another question from us: what are the world best practices in minimizing the health risks? What of these practices can be implemented in Russia and other cities? Well, it is a very general question. Well, there are many different risks in urban spaces in our country, and I have already mentioned that. Well, first of all, Moscow should start dealing with green spaces and stop saying that we have that Lasiny Ostrov, which is a huge park in Moscow. Well, it's great that it exists, and of course it's great that it is included in different studies and presentations to show how green Moscow is. But I'm talking about a green space within the Moscow Ring Road, because most of the city populations live within the Moscow Ring Road. And when I was participating in the expertise study by the Moscow government when the best urban planners were invited to the city to propose new approaches to developing the city, and everybody was talking about green and blue spaces. Well, if we talk about blue spaces, then maybe Moscow is nearing up to the great levels, but still these areas are still not very well equipped and infrastructured, like, for example, in New York, when there are many cycling paths where we have some, but unfortunately not everywhere, and also training places. We should have more points of sales and the blue spaces in a big city. Well, not to mention such cities as Amsterdam, because these are small cities. We should be compared to New York because population-wise we are very similar. And New York is not doing how Moscow did by trying to expand by adding new boroughs. And that's basically what I propose, developing blue spaces. And the first, the most important thing that I propose is green spaces. And one of the projects that I recently had a chance to study from the Moscow University. So when they calculate that 10 or 15 minutes of walking, and this is the factor that is now very often mentioned by Russian experts, this would be a really great experience that would really be in line with the best world practices. As for the development of public transportation, this is where our development is as high as and close to the world level, even outperforming the world level in many aspects, because I have a lot of experience with public transportation abroad, so I know what I'm talking about. As for the psychological comfort, which is of course extremely important, and here I already have a question to my colleague who will present a lecture after me. I remember that in Soviet Union there used to be the psychological service by phone, and this phone psychological aid is something that should also be developed in Moscow, because compared to many other cities, we don't have the well-developed culture of applying using psychological help, especially during the pandemic. And talking of the pandemic, there are not only psychological problems that we are experiencing and can anticipate, and we can talk about it the next time, because I only have 6 minutes left. If you have any other questions and if you want me to cover it, I would be happy to do it. Boris Alexandrovich, can you please talk in a little bit more detail about heat waves and cold waves, and what is the effect of a heat island within a city, and what measures can be taken to battle such effects? So you mentioned distribution of water. What else can be applied and implemented? Okay, well, I'm not going to give you a definition on what is a heat wave or a cold wave. You can see the list of publications that I sent to the department. You can read these publications. Well, I would like to mention once again that in 2010, the losses in the European part of the Russian Federation, the losses were really great. More than 50,000 deaths, and this is what most of the European colleagues are referring to when they're analyzing this situation. So what shall be done? Let's study the example of Vancouver. This year, the heat went up to 50 degrees, and so they created these spaces similar to markets. Well, which was a great innovation. Where this kind of hangars where they put mattresses and air conditioners with a very comfortable temperature at around 20 degrees. And so people who couldn't tolerate the heat, they could go to such hangar places just to lie there. There were water containers. And basically, there was all kind of medical aid provided, which is needed at stroke or heart attack. So this was an innovative approach. And in Moscow, the Skolkovo the School on Government is working on a research, on a report on heat waves, and it to some extent is also based on a booklet that I and my colleagues wrote. It also includes the best practices from Europe, since I'm a member of the working group of the WHO on health. And Skolkovo has requested more materials from us, so we hope that next year their work will be published. Thank you, Boris Alexandrovich. I see that there are no questions to you in our chat room, but the practice shows that some people ask questions after the lecture. Can we forward the questions to you if there will be any questions? Sure, you can send them to me. The more questions there are, so the more clarity the listeners have achieved, and it means that they managed to analyze the material that was presented to them. Thank you, Boris Alexandrovich. We're happy that you gave such that you so highly assessed the work of the Moscow department. I will be happy to see you on at our next events. Thank you. I will stay here. I would like to listen to the next lecture of my colleague. Okay, so our next lecturer is here. Alexander Danilov, the head of the medicine
наук и профессор. Добрый день, Алексей Борисович. Мы рады вас видеть сегодня с нами.
Hello, Alexey Borisovich. It is our pleasure to see you here. Hello, Irina. Hello, my esteemed colleagues. It is absolute pleasure to be part of that forum. It is truly an interdisciplinary workshop. It is giving us the idea on how we can figure something out and perhaps make an educated decision. Allow me to introduce myself. Oh, you cannot activate your presentation, the same thing. Boris, I do ask you to please turn off your presentation. That way I'll be able to hook up my slide set. Thank you. Well, my esteemed colleagues, today we'll be talking about health, because indeed recently health is focus of policymakers and the citizens. There are a lot of discussions, a lot of approaches and solutions. That problem is in the mind of everyone. If we'll take a look from the medical standpoint to see the progress in technology and health services, it's of course the innovative technology. We went a long way into putting together the artificial systems and technologies in prosthetics. Right now, the prosthetics are made that a runner can run faster than on his own legs. Artificial heart valves. And then there's this one professor suggests to do the head replacement operation. Of course, we do have certain regulations that are becoming a pharmacology. Our cities and towns have a drugstore one way or another. There is not a single block where that will be bereft of a drugstore. And if we'll cover every human being with drugs, we'll be able to get catastrophe. We'll have catastrophe on our hands. That fight for good health right now is going through a crisis. When we create new drugs, buy equipment, build hospitals, apparently, in reality, no matter how hard we try, no matter how much money we invest, it's not enough. It's not enough to have these medical facilities to resolve the problem, health problem of human race on the planet. People are sick. 75% are affected by all sorts of depressions. Recently, after coronavirus pandemic, they started building the innovative top-end hospitals that take care of comfort for people. But there is an idea to get a better living standards and to get them healthy. Right now we have a problems. And non-viral risk factors to viral risk factors. We were talking about cardiovascular diseases just recently. We were talking some that relate to ecological problems and some non-viral factors. And now with COVID pandemics, these factors got juxtaposed, and that viral infection, it was around all the time, so that living conditions we have created for ourselves is not very salutary for the health of its inhabitants, dwellers. If we'll take a look at scientific data, we'll realize that the people that live in urban areas, they have 20% higher risk of all sorts of psychological diseases, 40% higher risk in depression, and twice as high the schizophrenic contraction risk. We don't know. Maybe there is some genetic reasons for that. When we talk about schizophrenia, these kind of people live in the cities. Now the urban living actually increases the correlation of higher alertness level, the extreme alertness that leads to depression. And we started to study amygdala in the back of the cortex that actually plays great role in increasing the dangers of depression, alertness. and asocial sociopathic behavior. What else would affect this? And Boris Levich was talking about the air. Now we're looking at the air map from space. Apparently, before COVID, 9 million people a year died because of the air pollution, but nobody had a lockdowns. They did not close the borders. This is information from Lancet magazine. If we'll take a look about the correlation between the air pollution and mortality, well, to this day, there's a lot of data about this. Apparently, not only lungs suffer from air pollution, but the nervous system to begin with. These the particles matter, they irritate histamine cells and eventually lead to all sorts of neurological pathologies, and then later on they cause pulmonary failure, and that's all other things. Now here we have a slide that shows correlation between air pollution and COVID and death rate. We remember how big of an air pollution problem was for industrial cities. Another factor, the invisible factor that nobody paid a lot of attention, is noise pollution and noise environment. 150 million people in Europe are stressed out because of noise pollution in urban areas. And that impact is related directly not only to the transport, but to the improvement of urban living. And sometimes the price we pay for nice aesthetics in towns is actually derogatory for the overall outcome. So when we plan certain things to change our urban living for better, we should really pay close attention to possible consequences. Now, taking care of urban streets is a very good example. Now, hearing distortion is a very small problem, but it is a problem that urban dwellers suffer from. This hearing problems are easy to correct. There's a lot of technology involved in this that can help people to hear better. But neurological stress causes the overall neural system to shut down. That leads to all sorts of cardiovascular diseases and blood pressure diseases, also heart strokes. On that slide, you can see the mechanisms that breaks down neural regulation that leads to aforementioned consequences of noise pollution. Sometimes it may lead to diabetes, to morbid obesity, and all from noise pollution. Here's the statistics of noise pollution impact to human health. On top of mortality, noise pollution affects the neural system development. We see ADD and hyperactivity in young generation and children, and we understand that their behavioral patterns disturbed because of all sorts of stress, also from noise pollution. The noise pollution shows derogatory impact on voice development, hearing development. Noise pollution hits hippocampus, which is a part of human cortex, activity of which correlates with longevity. And it's been proven that hippocampus damage causes early aging. We are discussing human health, but the surrounding area also is not intact. The animals' behavior patterns also suffer, which may lead to all sorts of ecological derogatory consequences. Another aspect that I suggest to focus on is our light pollution. Until recently, good lighting was equaling safety, and governors were saying that better lighting on the streets is safer urban living because it even brings down the nighttime crime. However, excessive lighting gives us additional problem. Even the fact that we can't see the Milky Way is the smallest of a problem. But bright lighting on the street stimulates people being active at night. If it is safe and beautiful and glimmering, people go out at night, go to restaurants, go shopping, and all sorts of commercial companies is definitely facilitating that. So we develop a social jet lag when human organisms should rest when we have active lifestyle at night. Our rhythms, biological rhythms, go awry. There's huge risk of breast cancer, and apparently on the left you can see the map of light pollution, and on the right you can see the light of a breast cancer spreadage. Also, males are also suffering. They have all sorts of distortion of their biomechanisms and increases the risk of prostate cancer. All sorts of metabological processes are being distorted. The higher risk of obesity and diabetes, the whole thing is being focused. So people are doing their best to resolve the health problem. They say you need to do all sorts of athletic activities or sports, but if people are not very wise about what they do, and if they run around the central circle of Moscow where there's a lot of exhaust and nighttime, it actually is derogatory for their health. In a week or two, these people will go to their doctors complaining about what you see here in that slides. It is very important that these factors of the pleasant surrounding area goes across generations. If there's a baby's mother is a night person, she passes it over to her unborn baby. She sets him up or her up with a time bomb. The baby grows up with a cardiovascular disease, obese, and all sorts of risks. Rate is going higher. We basically pre-program next generation with chronic diseases. Another slide that I have for you is all sorts of distortions that lead to cortex diseases, cardiovascular diseases, and thinking about today's problems, we're talking about the vaccination and, so to say, social distancing, but our jet lag with distortion of biorhythms makes us susceptible to viral diseases. Now, dietary environment. If 2,000 years ago people had to get food, and those who could store energy and waste energy less were the ones that are on top of evolutionary pyramid. Those of 2,000 years ago are no longer on top of the pyramid because now people have diabetes, they are obese, there's too much food around us. This food is not healthy. In fact, inflammatory dangers are caused by this dietary situation. People have to understand dietary situation is something that needs to be focused on. Another problem of urban living is hyperdynamic and lack of motion. City dwellers are sitting down on a sofa, take elevator to go downstairs to the parking, then get behind the steering wheel, go to work. They're sitting down there, they go back to work, go down and sit down in the armchair, and they don't even come next to the television set. They use the remote control to turn it on and off and switch the channels. So these comforts and amenities, they lead to all sorts of risks of biological distortions. On that slide, you can see the mechanism, how it works. Here's the paradox. If we will focus on health organization system and we expect them to get us healthy, that is a naivete, because according to the statistics, the more we invest into health, the more diseases we get. This is a statistic. If we do not take any other measures with juxtaposed spheres of life. So this concept of fighting for health, and as a result of which we exist separated from the surroundings, when we believe that our body is constantly under siege and you have to fight the viruses and all sorts of factors and create new weapons to continue their fight. In the end, it leads to spread of the disease all over the world. The alternative to that approach is another approach. Otherwise, it'll be pulling the cart in different directions. When we want to better the economics, then people get sick because of these tasks, so to speak. Then we invest a lot of funds into health protection, and as you can know, the health services sometimes leads to problems understanding ecological problems, and ecological problems, in fact, derogatory affects the economics. We have to reinvent the paradigm and think of economics, health, and ecology as the unified, sustainable system. So the consequences of COVID-19 crisis shows us that eco-oriented view over the planet, the economy, the health is the only choice within the situation we find ourselves in. And in that respect, the human health should be considered as a balancing out factor of our existence and the immediate surroundings. And if we'll take a look at all the factors that affect the health of the population, and I understand that my colleagues from WHO clearly demonstrated, then health department events give us 10%. 20% is genetics and fathers and mothers, and then 70% totally depends on where we live, how we live, and what we do. If we compare these factors within one context, unified context, then in the end, the unhealthy surroundings kills more than any other factor. As you can see, the situation is drastic in Russia. The surrounding is the largest factor. If we'll go by the way of pharmacotherapy and spend more money on the health department, will make our people even more susceptible to all sorts of diseases. Today's medicine really goes after preventive measures, and preventive medicine is what they mostly do. We figure out the genetic susceptibility of this or that human to this or that disease, and then we try to improve the ability to stay healthy. The whole concept of staying healthy proves that immediate healthy surroundings, healthy living is a number one, gives us the most chances to stay healthy. World Health Organization specifically stated that not only we need the well-equipped hospitals and outpatient clinics, but when we do the blood work or we get the biopsy of every sort, it does not make us healthy. Health is not created in hospitals. Healthy living has to be in our dwelling, in our schools where we work. It is easier to create healthy surroundings rather than building new medical establishments. There will not be enough hospitals because chronic diseases are growing faster than we build hospitals. The idea of building a healthy surroundings and Design and Health Academy put together a concept of a salutary design. Aaron Antonovsky put together the theory of ontogenesis. Aaron Antonovsky specified that health is bringing the stress down, and Alan Delaney is the first president of International Health and Wellness Academy. He put together the concept of a salutary dwelling environment. His idea was to create an environment that would improve human interaction between themselves and the surrounding areas, and consider not the pathogenesis but salutogenesis, which is in fact salutary to the health, rather than deal with all sorts of disease and studies. The most important structure in human being is human cortex, and we talk about not only all sort of brain diseases, but the factors from immediate surroundings, the way they affect our cognitive and emotional state. And this impact on cognitive and emotional state directly correlates to the immune, endocrinical, and other human organism systems. Now, we have to remember that building materials and the dwelling proportions directly affecting the human cortex and neocortex. If we'll take a look at this design, I want to ask you, dear colleagues, what do you think about when you look at this picture? Obviously, the designers were tasked to create a logo showing the health protection system care about the family healthy environment. Obviously, they had all sorts of frugal budgeteering, and they could not focus on the details. The result was completely different. That clearly shows how well the adage, "The devil is in the details," work. Sometimes you can get the absolutely opposite effects. In order for the projects that are about health improvement, it is important that brain would like these projects, to make healthy environment projects, to be brain-friendly environment projects. This is how the immediate surroundings design affects human beings. Recently, a long time ago, you could get into movie hall October, you could buy tickets when you go to the box office. Now, everyone that goes to the movies, they go through all sorts of stalls with vendors selling sodas, chips, popcorn. So these people that go to the movies are forced to buy stuff that they weren't going to buy. Also, the immediate surrounding design affects human behavior in other aspects. For example, the reproductive function. The demographics could be resolved if we change the placement in our movie halls. This is an example on how surrounding design affects the human behavior. If we will display more globally which salutary factors could interact with diseases, you could take a look at this slide. There was research done that show that depression and lack of aesthetics shows that they're salutary for all sorts of diseases, contraption, lack of orientation, lack of meaning, loneliness. It stops our cortex from working. The immune system is not working right anymore. Salutary design can counteract this derogatory aspects, and that design, and you can see that in all sorts of research, it brings out the sense of happiness. It helps us to interact with nature, think about culture and art, get the point, get the quintessence of interaction with surroundings and other aspects I will talk about in other slides. International Design and Health Academy has developed a paradigm, a methodology, creating salutary projects within the dwelling design, house design, school design, medical institution design, and they reflect by which elements of internal design we get certain effects, positive thinking, like Aaron Andonovsky depicted in his concept. For example, the amygdala is the specific part of health of our cortex that is directly related to all sorts of alertness distortions and overall anxiety. Now, a lot of designers are trying to redesign children dwellings, and they go overboard. They create a flashy environment where you cannot stay for more than 10-15 minutes. If we go to a museum of an art or Tretyakov gallery and we can see we'll enjoy an art piece, a painting of Klik by Munka, and we stare at it for 40 or 50 minutes, it affects us, and it's okay. But if we get the same design in front of us all day long, the effect will be directly the opposite. So choosing the color palettes for art therapy and color palette design for inside rooms will affect the sense of well-being and increased productivity of an immune system. The color has also, on top of cultural meaning, there's also an interesting biological meaning. For example, one of the architects I know, Richard Moretto, was tasked to put together a design of a building in Morocco. And when he looked at this color, he applied this color palette, the specific blue color, in his work. And apparently, that wavelength of this color keeps away the insects. So then the city mayor ordered other buildings to be painted with this color. It has a cultural aspect, aesthetical aspect and biological aspect, and a lot depends on the color quality. That is why it is really important to pay attention to paint quality. It's not just a formalized and formal approach. You have to take it into consideration when doing the design, because it affects the human perception, and if you use low-quality paint, then you can get the opposite effect. Today we know that taste and smell may be distorted when you contract the COVID virus. We think perhaps it's pretty innocent. We are still oriented in surroundings, but the distortion of taste and smell breaks down the system of
Поэтому с помощью воздействия на запахи мы можем опять благоприятно или неблагоприятно воздействовать на
using the smells, we can actually affect our comfort and good functioning of neuroimmunal system. A lot of people using that. You know, the Starbucks coffee, they use the smells, and they used it to attract much more clients. And Armani, they have started their odors. They started spraying them in their hotel in Dubai, and they used the smells sprayed within the compounds, hotel compounds. And then the behavior environment, we understand the aggressive behavior and well-being totally relates to the climate and temperature. All these riots, they take part when it's hot. That's why the air duct system brings down the aggressive behavior, improves the emotional state, and augments the cognitive functions. For example, with Norwegian countries, when they were fighting for the energy effectiveness in 50s and 60s and 70s, they used to build buildings with tiny windows, with very good for conserving heat, but they forgot to do the air duct system really effectively. And apparently the scholastic aptitude of the students went down when they improved the air duct system by 30%. They have witnessed improvement in health, in scholastic ability, and even the buying power went up all over the country. If you calculate right, using the correct methodology, you can witness effects of the new drugs and pills. You can see how much the drugs are improving that, or perhaps just improving the environment. You can stay away from medical procedures. Another aspect is aesthetic. For example, another building that is a center for Cortex Health, created by an architect whose father suffered from Alzheimer's, and the architect decided to bring this problem to an attention and depicted the world the way the Alzheimer's patients see the world. It's not very impressive, and I don't think that people who work in that center really take pleasure in coming into the chaotical building every morning. Here's another medical project. It evokes completely different sensations. Apparently, our brain is quick to react to aesthetic impact. If we see something beautiful, then cortex starts to emanate endogenic opioids. And if we see something horrible, then inflammatory compounds are being emanated, and we start feeling stress and anxiety. So we could create surroundings with the projects that would improve our brain productivity, endocrinal system, and develop cells of well-being. Here is an example of salutary design for a medical facility. They have a lot of light even in X-ray room. There's enough room in patient room where they can have guests over there. Beautiful view from the window. It is not scary to visit the MRT room. Also, there is no noise pollution. It's very quiet. People don't hear the medical equipment sounds. There's enough darkness at night, enough light during the day, ambient light, and there are systems that cutting-edge technology that operate the ambient lighting according to time of day to further improvement of biorhythms. Apparently, people recuperate better, the wounds heal better and quicker, and people leave the hospital sooner. And also we have manufacturers in our country locally, and we have tried to inspect these technologies. These technologies are available here in Russia. We were talking how important it is to have elements of surroundings to be viable. Our brains react to objects by way of correlating its association to its sense. If anything you see that is senseless, it causes apathy and anxiety. Sometimes everything is well thought out, but certain nuances were omitted, and it shows the lack of professional planning. People calculated the area of the dwelling, they figured out about the shops and parking and kindergartens, but there's certain elements are missing that improve appeal of the town, as it sort of defines the point. It defies the point. There were problems in China like that. They did not use the quality architects and city planners, and they end up with ghost towns. One of the elements that increased the appeal of the immediate surroundings, and we talked a lot about it in the workshops, we also put together the calculation system that clearly shows that natural surroundings improve health. I want to give Paul Eller, the Canadian scientist, as an example, and he was here in Moscow. He was presenting the conference Health and City of the Future. And when there's a person had electrodes attached to his body, they were getting the data for pulse and cardiovascular and the system, and person was moving around urban landscapes, and when the person was going through aesthetically pleasing areas, then the data that was collected from him was improved. Whenever he went through unpleasing industrial like urban landscapes, we were reading stress reactions and figuring out the factors. The stress-inducing factors is a part of health protection paradigm, since, of course, the chronic stress is the reason for contracting disease, yet the nature becomes a vaccine for improvement of health, well-being, and endocrinal system.
So here you can see how environment can improve different indicators and lead to economic dividends. That's why the Moscow government is now taking actions to expand the green areas. So, for example, the Sokolniki Park, which should turn into a more elaborated area, include not only a park but also the shopping areas. You can see how different subway stations now include the design that allows the natural light to come in, and when we assess the human health or the environmental status, we should remember that we should put them together in one analysis. And now you see the Moscow government is also taking actions, building new subway stations with new trains by trying to decrease the passenger burden, and also the new systems of air disinfection and generally aesthetically appealing projects with designing the environmental status in the city so that the citizens would be healthy. And this is a very sad state that we are currently in, and you see that the data on air quality in Moscow is probably not that fresh. There are more updated versions of it. Even Euronews is showing it in Moscow, in Beijing, in New York. You can find it online. And it turns out that most of the big city citizens are susceptible to risk and all the risks that Borysevich also talked about in his presentation. So basically, we will never have enough hospitals for 12 million people, which is the population of Moscow. And that's why we need to dramatically speed up some projects to improve the air quality in Moscow as well as in Krasnoznamensk, so that we could decrease the areas that are designed for building hospitals and build more parks instead. So if we're talking about the Sadovy Ring in Moscow, you can see that the first steps have been taken. There are more trees have been planted and more pedestrian zones have been created. But if we speak about the real science behind it, the practices, then the correlation of these green areas to the transport that is circulating around the Sadovy Ring, and this there is no real evidence of health improvement. And some of the scientific evidences already exist, and they really should be taken into account when doing calculations on creating such urban design. And instead of building houses with lots of square meters, you can sell similar buildings with at a higher price and maybe a fewer square meters, but when it is surrounded by green areas, which will be much more favorable for public health, because urban health is very much correlated with the health of a human body. You can probably heard of a story of a little boy who was painted in gold just for fun at a party, but in several hours this boy died because of this. And basically, if our cities will be planned without the sufficient air circulation system, so we are endangering the population of our cities, and with no signs for health improvement. And of course, when we now talk about the threats, especially the COVID threat, we're facing the situation when people are becoming much more susceptible to such threats, and our response to such threats should be the increase of resilience, of urban resilience. And there are two approaches to this. One is the improvement of the environment, and another one is the coping strategy. So you know that this summer, Sochi and Crimea have had to go through serious problems with flooding, and basically the infrastructure of these areas was not equipped enough to face such difficulties. And basically, when we build infrastructure, we need to calculate and think of the aesthetic effect. And the most important thing is that green areas and green landscapes are really important for psychological rehabilitation and decrease of stress. And such factors become even more important when we think about the sound of birds singing and the visual effects. And it's not enough to just see the nature on a TV monitor, but to create the natural surroundings with the whole ecological chain where people can enjoy nature. And it's we really need to think about how we can work out these problems. For example, you know that there is a problem of using old tires in designing the public spaces in Russia, and how dangerous these tires can be, how dangerous it is for children. And children who are used to these elements of design in the future, when they grow up, might also be taking wrong decisions in urban planning. So when we're talking about the environmental improvement, we should listen to experts in biology, in ecology. So basically, if in the city of Krasnoyarsk we start planting palms, well, it might sound as a great idea, but if we think about the long-term effect, long-term projects, then maybe we shouldn't. There should be less of a human factor in urban design, and use other elements that can improve the environmental health. Also, the problem of pollen and the effect it has on human health. So when we talk about the healthy environment, it's not enough to just plant trees, but we should also consider the context of environmental planning, taking all the factors into account altogether. And so a new system of standards for healthy environment has been initiated in Russia. The standards that should be taken into account when planning cities and districts. And some of the standards I would like to cover. And as an introduction, I want to point out that today we are moving towards the IVF technologies when the spermatozoids are used for impregnation, and basically such sperm cells do not participate in a natural run for impregnation, and basically not the strongest spermatozoid is selected for creating a new child, and basically, genetically speaking, this future child will not be the healthiest, and any of similar projects that increase public mobility should consider many different factors, the climate and geographical location, so that the environment would not lead to new problems, but would help to solve the existing problems while fitting into the existing landscape. I would also like to bring some numbers when talking about the economical reasonability. So, for example, the example of the Tokyo subway, where at some point the increasing number of suicidal cases has been detected, and the government of Tokyo decided to work on this problem, and it was proposed to use the barriers all over the network of the Tokyo subway system, but yet it would be very costly. And through the bidding process, another proposal was made, and it included using the LED lights, blue LED lights, as an alternative, and it was a biological understanding of how sound and light can be used as a very economical option to solving the problems, the human problems, and that's why the various disciplines can be used in solving problems, and this is what the Institute of Interdisciplinary Medicine is doing, bringing together the specialists from different fields, psychologists and medical specialists, and we are at the moment evaluating the urban and human health factors. It is our new project, and we're assessing the state of air pollution in buildings and cars, and trying to figure out how we can influence these factors, not only through medicines, but also by improving these health parameters. Because human health is very much dependent on environmental health. So we're trying to design the environmental health by assessing it and assessing the human health. And one of the hybrid integration of when the big city citizens are in synergy of the factors that we discussed, the light environment. This is what helps us to calculate the risks of different diseases, cancer, and how we can influence them by using more rational approaches. And also another slide shows how music can help, can increase the help of medical staff.
В некоторых больницах вводят департамент звука,
They start playback of certain music and they get health improvement. And when they design the immediate surroundings, there is a methodology that allows activate the assessment of original data and design of immediate surroundings, keeping in mind the factors we described here. And these are the principles of sustainable progress. Here are the principles. The new building has to naturally become a part of immediate surroundings. Right now, we are showing you the project of Oriental, the Pacific Architectural College, and the students considered the wind factors, the climate factors, the green spaces and natural plants surrounding the area. That project collected an award for Golden Column 4 years back. That Richard Moretta suggested the skyscraper for Moscow that was supposed to deal with the following tasks. There is a technology that allows Moscow River energy to be used for the electrical generation, and also wind power swaying the building also can generate the electricity. And that center was supposed to be a part of sustainable development for the educational center. And they would use the other different technology that would symbolize the improvement in health. And here's a different example in Norway, in one of the villages. For 300 days a year, they have no sun. People were paid well around there, and they had some natural resources development, and they were digging out some natural resources. The mayor found the sponsor. He was offered 300 million euros. They created these special mirrors on the cliff hanging above the city, and in fact shading the city. They redirected the sunlight to the little town, and that way the city dwellers now will have 300 sunny days a year. They had a huge celebration and party. This shows how technology can improve human health, not by way of a direct impact to human intestines, but by way of changing the immediate surroundings. And here is a synergy decision of a building where the heat preservation, the air circulation, and ambient lighting is all reserved. You see those little wings, little flaps that the building is covered with? They work in these aspects. Here you can see in one of the smaller villages the ambient lighting where people took care of the bats because usual ambient lighting blocks and distorts their nighttime activity, and in fact sleep as well for other not nocturnal animals. But infrared does not disturb bat raiders, but people still can see in the dark and find their way. That is what I wanted to say at the end of my intro to the problems of connectivity, correlation between ecology and health. It is very important to have a synergy between different disciplines, to have an interdiscipline solution. This is what brings us to positive effects. I do thank you for you paying attention, and I'm ready to answer the questions. Alexey Borisovich, thank you very much for such a lecture. I think a lot of people don't even think about just by how much the immediate surroundings in buildings and ambient lighting, they affect the human health. But after your lecture, I think a lot of people will start thinking what elements, which elements to use, what colors to choose, what furniture to choose when they're selecting the elements of their immediate surroundings and dwellings. We got few questions about the room design, the inside design. Could you please share with us which are the most positive colors to the emotional state of a human beings and which colors we should stay away from? From what I remember, you mentioned Morocco, I may be mistaken, where the building walls were covered with blue paint. Thank you, Irina, for your question. Indeed, this is very sensitive question. And after that lecture, that SOEC, the electric company, they invited me to figure out the repainting of their walls to improve the health of their employers. They paid us money. We went there, and later on we figured out that they have actually 3 shifts working there. They get up at like 3 or 4 in the morning, they take a bus, they're driven there, they work there 12 hours in a row. If we paint the walls, we won't be able to allow the biorhythms to function well. When we're talking about certain factors, it has to be understood and analyzed in the context of the other factors. There are no bad or good paints. Some colors stimulate, like red or orange. They are good if you need to wake up a person, stimulate a person. Masha Guseva paints stimulating paintings. If you see a painting behind me, that's a stimulating design. This is very good as a first or a second cup of coffee. But if you're working non-stop 10 hours in a row, and then again you're drinking your 11th cup of coffee, the opposite effects. That's what you'll get. It is important to understand which color palettes are good for what kind of activity. There is the specific school and programs. In our university, we also have a program like that that provides the basic knowledge on how to use various color palettes when designing the dwelling area. When you talk about the city design, we see the trend for bright colors, the red, the green. That is the response to gray and dull area, but this is a hyper reaction. We need everything in balance. That's a whole science, and you can't just give an answer from the get-go, which is good and what is bad. It is important to analyze, to figure out the whole complex. Perhaps I have confused you, but the whole point is there are simple answers, like green and blue, they dull pain. But if the paint is of low quality and they're faded, you will get a toxical effect. With the little children, they want the toys beautiful, colorful. If the paint is of good quality and painted well, then the little child's brain will be better developed. But if it's cheap or kind of dirty-like colors, then it'll cause anxiety in your children. It is important to be professional about resolving these issues. You cannot extrapolate one solution to everything. Yes, thank you. One more question. Right now, a lot of people are spending a lot of time in the office. Some people spend like 10, 12 hours. Is there number of measures to optimize the innards of the office area to provide for better health of the employees? Sometimes people are sitting without the windows and with poor lighting, no ambient lighting, or the office is high up on a high floor and people have no chance to flick the windows open to get the fresh air and so on and so forth. Thank you, Irina. You already mentioned the risk factors that are specific to modern-day offices. There are solutions, and we put together the employer's education course. It is called the design of a smart, immediate surroundings that an environment that would improve the health and productivity and efficacy. The point is to improve cognitive ergonomics, what we call it. We want the human brain to work better, more effective, and also we need to treat health not like walking into the outpatient clinics when people want to take a day off to visit a dentist, endocrinologist, proctologist, or whatever. We need to create an environment that would drastically reduce the need for such days off. Perhaps you may implement fitness in the office, think about ambient lighting or dynamic ambient lighting. Also, important to consider the placement of your office workers to bring down the stress. There's like complex measures that we offer in our projects where there's active environment, clean water, good dietary practices. There's a whole bunch of advice that we provide that you can implement to improve efficacy, productivity, and health. It's not one solution, it's not one color or one unit of equipment or ergonomic armchair. The better understanding we get for what is required from immediate environment, then we can pre-program the effects. Like there's a company, Genzyme, they have calculated after they have implemented salutary design, they actually saved on the medical expenses that they had to pay for their workers. And they also got better profits from extra creativity and improved efficacy of their workers' productivity. Everything needs to be analyzed, considering economy, ecology, and health. Alexey Borisovich, and the actual workers, what can they do, the office workers, to resolve that issue? The actual office workers got to understand that human being is a live organism that requires recuperation. And in order to work effectively, you have to recuperate and recharge your batteries. So if you're sitting at your desk 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. without taking a break, you will actually achieve less than if you sit there for 6 hours and take breaks, lunch breaks, gym breaks. Your efficacy and productivity will improve. That's how it works. You have to recuperate through physical activity. You have to make time for lunch, and don't talk on the phone when you're eating lunch. That 30 minutes in the day, you have to get out of your office, walk around to some cafeteria or a restaurant, whatever is there. I want you to prefer healthy food, and then you need to find a way over the day for small exercises, maybe even sitting down in the armchair, stretching or whatnot. Take care of your health, understanding that you need time to recuperate. And if your employer gets involved, then they can allow for better ambient lighting, perhaps get membership in gym membership, work for the companies that value their employees. And I understand that it is actually economically viable. Have the gyms, the dance halls, the meditation rooms within the office environment. That improves productivity and efficacy. Thank you very much. When over the time of your lecture, you mentioned that your university was developing the standard for health and well-being. Did you ever assess and evaluate the possible results from implementing your approach? And if you had any results, do you have experience applying that standard? This standard initiated by us to be implemented as a well-building standard, which exists. We created in our own university, we created the environment like that. We have won an International Health Design Award, and we figured that we have decreased in 20% in medical leave, and we have calculated 30% improvement in overall production efficacy. We used to have old-style office. We spent some money to refurbish it, to restyle it. We brought in the ambient system, dynamic lighting. We got the stress relief room, and we got the results that I mentioned. When we speak about the other companies, we offer the solutions like that. But here, I have to get our clients to agree if they would agree to allow us to share the methodology that they used, and then the companies could evaluate the effect from implementing those innovations to figure out if it makes sense financially for them or not. I understand. Thank you very much again, Alexey Borisovich. For now, we do not have any more questions. If they will appear, then in that case, by way of electronic connectivity or email, we'll forward them to you. Thank you, Irina, my esteemed participants. Thank you for your attention. Stay healthy. Take care of yourself and your immediate surroundings. Bye. Thank you again. Goodbye.
Завершились мастер-классы Всемирной организации здравоохранения. Надеемся, что полученные знания...
Thanks again. The workshops of World Health Organization are over, and we hope that you will get to improve your health and you will get your economy to be more and more viable, and realization and implementing the newly acquired knowledge within your dwelling, within your towns. Perhaps it'll bring good results. Now we get new premises. Which is better economy for the budget when you improve your green areas, parks, and infrastructure, pedestrian infrastructure, bring extra profits in economy. And sometimes the 1 milligram PM in immediate air dispersion is lower, actually gives economic viable results. We thank every participant. We had people from various regions of our country, and we hope that newly acquired knowledge could be effectively implemented in your areas and improve people's health, because we are the people. In the end, I would like to end. It's not the medical risk factors. It's not just air pollution or physical activity. It's not only green zones. Another important factor is climate change. It happens, and everybody can see that. All of us can see that. That's an accepted fact all over the world, and the measures need to be taken. That is why October 25 to 28, there will continue that discussion in Moscow with factors that affect it. The convention would be the regions for health. Experts will do their talk. The world regions will share their experience and the best practices there. The results will be online. That calls us the Network for Regional Health. We will add the link on our site. We thank you for spending 4 times with us, getting the contact with us, voting, asking questions. Our speakers were very interesting people. Finally, Moscow is not actually the second time. Moscow and European and American, all the continents took part in that large problem solution, figuring out the issue, clearing out the climate. And again, thank you very much for being with us. See you next time.